next story is about a moment people daydream about, being handed that big check.
The moment 5 Ottawa area men found out for sure that they had won $60 million.
How often do we actually get to see someone who potentially won $200 million, $275 million?
The dream of winning the lottery has been an integral part of human history throughout the ages. For some, this dream presents itself in the form of a fun, harmless hobby. For others, this dream of endless riches can become the only source of hope in a life filled with insurmountable debt and abysmal despair. Unfortunately, this regrettable group makes up the majority of the world's population, with a recent study showing that 50% of eligible adults are buying a minimum of 3 tickets every single week. As a nation, we spend more on lottery tickets than we do on books, sports tickets, video games, movies, and music combined. But in order to truly understand how we got to this point, we're going to have to take a trip back in time. The year is 256 BC. The Zhou dynasty has just ended, the first brick has just been laid in what will later be known as the Great Wall of China, and in a tiny village in eastern China, Liu Bang is born.
Bang, born to a family of rice farmers and peasants, has aspirations of something greater in life. Those around him describe him as outspoken, charismatic, and self-controlled, which could very well explain his rise from a farmer to a minor provincial officer to popular local political figure to the founder of the Han dynasty. Being the emperor to lead China out of control of the tyrannical Qin dynasty, Bang reduced taxes and got rid of unpaid labor, all while at the same time setting in motion the beginning of the Silk Trade, one of the most important trade routes in history. As emperor, Bang and many of his successors were tasked with continuing the production of the Great Wall of China, which had been worked on for nearly 5 centuries. However, up until this point, the wall had caused significant problems for China. In fact, the main reason that the Qin dynasty before him collapsed was due to the fact that public rebellion was spurred by high taxes and the exploitation of the poor, all of which decimated the economy just to try and complete the wall. According to legend, Cheng Lung, an ancestor of Liu Bang and an emperor during the Han dynasty, was very wary of raising taxes, knowing that doing so could trigger a rebellion upon his kingdom. So he created a game called Keno, a widespread lottery game very similar to what we now know as bingo. In this version, however, it was called Beige Piao, or White Pigeon Ticket, and would consist of a ticket with 80 Chinese characters that would need to match with the random characters pulled out of a container. The term white pigeon came from the fact that a pigeon would deliver the results of the Keno game to nearby villages. This fun and revolutionary game spread across China, further funding the construction of the Great Wall of China. Around the same time, a different form of the lottery was held in the West. Just like the Han dynasty, ancient Rome was in dire need of workers and restoration to their once great city. Augustus Caesar, who was the first Roman emperor, ran large-scale lotteries, with tickets as an alternative to the higher taxation that, if it had been implemented, would have reduced his public support. However, this wasn't the only lottery happening in ancient Rome. On Saturnalia, an ancient Roman holiday to honor the god Saturn, wealthy noblemen would invite guests over and distribute tickets. Numbers corresponding to the tickets would be drawn, with every guest guaranteed to win something fancy, such as silverware or platters. But this form of the lottery was reserved for only the wealthiest in the kingdom of ancient Rome. Really, it was only until the 15th century that our modern sense of the word lottery began to grow in popularity. Towns like Burgundy and Flanders, now known in the modern day as France and Belgium, attempted to hold lotteries to raise money to fortify defenses and aid the poor. In Italy, a public system called the Genoa lottery grew massively. In the north, Queen Elizabeth created a lottery system to raise money for repairing harbors and other public goods. Overall, in all of these earlier stages, public lotteries held by the government were the only allowed form of gambling, which might help explain some of its wild popularity. But it didn't take long before problems started arising, especially when rich lenders saw the opportunity to purchase limited stock tickets and resell them at massive markups. Another type of bet was called insurance, where people people would make a small wager on whether or not a number would be called, kind of like a lower risk, lower reward lottery. The problem was, England couldn't receive any monetary value for these transactions, and even though policymakers try their best to outlaw these insurance wagers, they remained rampant in the black market. This led to critics of the lottery at the time to claim that lotteries caused mass gambling and were extremely fraudulent. This massive push, along with the fact that the government wasn't making any money from it, made it so these lotteries eventually got outlawed in 1826. In fact, it wouldn't be until 1994 that England would see the lottery again. But while England slept, the US was just waking up. The Continental Congress, America's temporary government of the colonies, voted to establish a lottery to raise funds for the American Revolution. Even though this initiative ended up being abandoned, smaller public lotteries were held across the country, which helped fund some of the top schools in education today, such as Harvard, Columbia, and Yale. Over the course of the next few decades, privatized lotteries grew in popularity, until, similarly to England, there became opposition in its way. In 1868, the US Congress declared that using the mail or postal service for matters relating to lotteries was illegal, and the Supreme Court in 1878 ruled that lotteries had a demoralizing influence upon the people. But similar to England, despite these rulings, lotteries continued to run. But by far, the most successful lottery was held in the boot of the South, Louisiana. This lottery was huge. Every major city across the country using their own workers to help this private company run its massive operation. This meant that the tiny state of Louisiana, with a population of just over 3 million at the time, was running a lottery with $2 million in ticket sales every single month, working out to $20 million in today's money. Notably though, the Louisiana Lottery Company was tied to severe corruption and bribing, which only further tarnished the image of the lottery in the United States. $240 million a year. Massive fraud and corruption were enough to get some heads turning. Eventually, harsher policy and enforcement led to all lotteries being shut down, with, ironically enough, the Louisiana Lottery being the last lottery left to be shut down in 1893. However, in the years following the ban, many states began to reconsider the issue and started to legalize the lottery once again. Was it because corruption and bribery weren't considered a threat anymore? No. Was it because the image of the lottery was completely wiped clean? Not at all. What really sold these politicians on allowing the lottery once again was the potential the lottery had to generate significant revenue for the state. With many state budgets stretched thin and the need for additional sources of revenue becoming increasingly apparent, many states saw the lottery as a potential solution. By legalizing the game, these state governments could generate millions of dollars in revenue that could be used to fund a wide range of public services and programs. Immediately, the lottery revenue that these states received skyrocketed, with the revenue increasing nearly 27-fold from 1977 through 2008. Today, the lottery is legal in 45 states, and the revenue generated increases every single year. In fact, there are 11 states in which lottery revenues exceeded revenues from corporate taxes. In terms of spending, last year, Americans spent $105 billion on the lottery, working out to $535 per eligible person. In terms of where the money goes, the majority of the funds generated by the lottery are used to fund public services and programs in the state where the game is played. In some states, lottery money has been used to fund school construction projects and to provide scholarships for college students. Lottery money has also been used to improve infrastructure, such as by funding the construction of new roads, bridges, and public transportation systems. And in some cases, lottery money has been used to support public services such as police departments and fire departments, as well as to provide funding for programs that help disadvantaged individuals and communities. As for who plays the lottery, studies have shown that the majority of players in the US are middle-aged and have at least some college education. However, the game is popular among people of all ages and backgrounds. Regarding addiction, there is some concern that the lottery can contribute to the problem of gambling. However, supporters of the game argue that the vast majority of players are able to enjoy the game responsibly. As for the future of the lottery, it's likely that the game will continue to be a popular pastime for millions of Americans. Despite the criticism, the potential for the game to generate significant revenue for state governments will likely keep it legal and widely played in the US. In recent years, the rise of digital and online lottery games has made it easier than ever for people to participate, and the global market for lottery games is expected to continue to rise in the upcoming years. People now have the option to select numbers on their smartphones from any geographical location to try their hand at the elusive jackpot that could flip the course of their life. Whether used for good or for ill, the lottery remains a fascinating and enduring feature of human history.